artificial intelligence a potential risk to society? Experts want advanced AI development paused on the day the UK government publishes its plan to police it. And shares in the Chinese firm Alibaba surge after the company announces it's splitting up into 6 separate businesses. This is World Business Report with me, Mark Lobel. Lots to get in today, so let's begin with a question of our time. Is artificial intelligence a threat to society and humanity? Well, a group of AI experts and industry execs, including Elon Musk, believe so and have signed an open letter calling for a 6-month pause on advanced AI development. That's training systems more powerful than OpenAI's newly launched ChatGPT. And here in the UK, the government has set out its plans to regulate AI with new guidelines on responsible use. Critics fear the rapid growth of AI could threaten jobs or be used for malicious purposes, but it is boosting economies worldwide. So let's get the latest thoughts on all this with Sue Daly from the industry body Tech UK. Sue, remind us why governments and states and companies all think that AI can do us harm.
Well, AI technologies have huge potential to help our economy and our society, to address issues such as increased productivity, to help in the climate change emergency, to help people in their everyday lives. But of course, there are concerns as well around how this rapidly evolving technology is having an impact on the way that we all live, the way that we all work. And importantly, how do we get this right, not just for businesses, but for people in their everyday lives?
Yeah, worries that it could spread disinformation, that these chatbots hallucinate by giving us false statements. So in response, the UK regulator has come up with a proposal. They're not saying that we should have a single regulator. They are being criticised for being quite light touch. I mean, even in China, you get an alert if AI is being used in things that you're seeing. So, how does that gone down with you, what the UK are proposing?
Well, we have to see the devil in the detail. The white paper is still not out, but from what we can see in terms of the approach that's being proposed this morning, we welcome the approach. It's focused on principles, key principles, like how do we get transparency, explainability, safety, security, redress? How do we get those issues right so we build trust in these technologies? But also, how do we ensure that the rules of the road and the regulation around AI are context specific. So looking at how AI technologies are being applied and used in sectors, situations, industries today and in the future, and leaning on the UK's already existing world-leading regulators in these areas. These are people that know their domains, they know their sectors, they know how their industries are working, and also how these technologies are already being applied. So we think this approach is the right one to help businesses take the opportunity of these technologies and get this right for people.
Sue Daly, everyone's wondering what AI would make of all of this.
That's a good question. I think what is key is that AI itself is evolving and is keeping developing. We're only at the start of what these technologies can do. So what we need to make sure that we have in the UK is an approach that is agile, is adaptable, is flexible as these technologies evolve. And I think from the proposals we've seen this morning, that's what we have here in the UK.
All right, Tech UK's Sue Daly there. Thanks for joining us on World Business Report. Shares of Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba opened 15% higher in Hong Kong this morning. Why? Because Jack Ma's Alibaba empire is to be broken up after Beijing's crackdown on China's technology sector. The shake-up comes a day after Mr. Ma, the 58-year-old founder of Alibaba, returned to mainland China after several months without an official appearance. His long absence came after he criticised China's regulators in 2020. Well, our Asia business reporter Mariko Oi has more.
Well, Alibaba is a $220 billion empire, often called China's Amazon, and it includes services like cloud computing and entertainment. But they will all be split into 6 separate business units, and each of them will have their own boss and board members. And more importantly, they can also raise money by going public. It's basically to comply with increased regulation, but also to adapt with more competition. It is the biggest reorganization in the company's 24-year history and comes after Beijing launched that years-long regulatory crackdown on the tech sector. The timing of the announcement, though, is very interesting because on Monday we found out that the founder of Alibaba, Jack Ma, had just returned to China after living overseas for at least a year. Remember, he criticized the country's regulators back in 2020, and since then his business empire has come under huge scrutiny. And the company's shares have fallen some 70%, wiping around $600 billion in value since then. But investors have been loving this latest announcement. Shares in New York popped and closed more than 14% higher, and also in Hong Kong, ending the day 12% higher. And Jack Ma's return and this reorganization of Alibaba, this could be just another sign that Beijing is starting to warm back up to technology businesses, because the government really needs to revive economic growth after its COVID restrictions really took a toll on the world's second biggest economy.
The cost of heat pumps, unless you have
Out on the roads, electric cars are becoming a more common sight. Fast forward a few years, millions of us will most likely be driving them. Battery demand is expected to skyrocket, and attention will no doubt turn to getting those batteries reused or recycled. And that's exactly what's happening in Norway. There, an initial wave of EV batteries are reaching the end of their life. Adrian Murray paid a visit for us to Fredrikstad to see a first-of-its-kind recycling plant. Have a look.
Here in Norway, a fifth of all vehicles are now battery-powered.
As more drivers switch over to electric vehicles like this one, the number of batteries that we use is going to soar.
The EU hopes to see 30 million of them on European roads by 2030. And will also need huge batteries to help store more wind and solar energy. Lithium batteries last 10 to 15 years, and what we do with them next is a question Norway is already grappling with. This new recycling plant in Fredrikstad is a first of its kind in the country and the largest in Europe, able to handle up to 25,000 EV batteries a year.
Large, heavy batteries like these are broken down and the materials inside are separated. Ultimately, what they end up with is this precious mixture, black mass.
It's made up of lithium, cobalt and other valuable metals, which are in short supply, and will go into making new batteries at this gigafactory in northern Sweden.
We are just using the metals again and again and again instead of going into the mines and dig up new ones. If we don't recover or if we don't recycle the material we already have, then we will get lack of material for raw material to produce new batteries.
However, it's a new industry and the technology is still being developed.
The biggest challenge for the recycling is getting the costs down. This is being an aluminum can. That can also vary. It could be plastic, it could be other materials on the outside, which makes the recycling challenging because you have several different form factors and types, and also chemistries on the inside to recycle.
End-of-life batteries can also be put to other uses first, like energy storage.
We can try to use it for so-called second life application. When you take the battery out of the vehicle, there are still a lot of cells which are in pretty decent conditions and they can work elsewhere. The community is somewhat divided here on which path we need to take.
Currently, only 5% of lithium batteries get reused, and the vast majority of recycling takes place in China. It's often manual and dangerous.
At least in Norway they're collected, but worldwide, of course, we need a bigger system which captures all the countries which has EV, because we need those materials and we need batteries to be collected because it can be harm for nature if it goes into landfills.
There's a long road ahead when it comes to battery recycling, but here in Norway, that journey is beginning. Adrian Murray, BBC News, Fredrikstad.
Just time to bring you one final story. Swiss investment bank UBS has rehired Sergio Ermotti as CEO to steer its massive takeover of Credit Suisse. Ermotti is best known for rebuilding UBS after the global financial crisis. Current CEO Ralph Hamers will step down shortly, but will stay on as an advisor. Don't forget you can get in touch with me and some of the team on Twitter. I'm at Mark Lobel. Thanks for watching. That's World Business Report.
Hello, you're watching BBC News with me, Ben Brown. Children across the UK are being affected by the cost of living crisis as families are forced to make tough choices about how they spend their money. 4 young children aged 8 to 11 have been sharing their experiences of living through the winter months with Newsround reporter Hayley Hassel.